The station floated in the darkness of space like a small light in an endless night. Station Kepler 442 was home to the Galactic Council, a place where different species from across the galaxy came to talk and make peace. Ambassador Zixthor stood near the docking bay window and watched a new ship approach. It was a human ship. Zixthor had read the files about humans. They were a new species, barely 200 years into space travel. The files said they were weak. Their bodies had no natural armor. They had no claws or sharp teeth. They could not breathe poison gas or survive in vacuum. A single deep cut could kill them. Their bones broke easily. They needed food and water constantly. By every measure that mattered in the galaxy, humans were fragile creatures. The ship docked with a soft thud. Zixthor adjusted his translator device and waited. The airlock door opened with a hiss of air. 3 humans walked through. The first human was tall for his species, maybe 1.8 meters. He wore a dark blue uniform with strange symbols on the chest. His hair was brown and cut short. His skin was pale. He smiled when he saw Zixthor, showing small, flat teeth that looked like they could barely chew soft food. "Ambassador Zixthor," the human said. His voice was clear through the translator. "I'm Commander Jake Morrison. This is Lieutenant Claire Bennett and Dr. Peter Hughes. Thank you for meeting with us." Zixthor clicked his mandibles in greeting. "Welcome to Station Kepler 442. The Council has been expecting you." They walked through the station corridors. Zixthor noticed how the humans moved. They were not clumsy, but they seemed so breakable. Claire was smaller than Jake, maybe 1.6 meters tall. Peter was somewhere in between. They looked around with interest, their small eyes taking in everything. "Your station is impressive," Claire said. She had long dark hair tied behind her head. "How many species live here?" 47 different species work on this station," Zixthor replied. "We have representatives from most of the major civilizations in this sector." They reached the council chamber. It was a large room with seats arranged in a circle. Representatives from a dozen species were already there. The Velcrin, like Zixthor, with their hard shells and multiple legs. The Thornid, with their energy-resistant skin. The Grath, massive creatures who stood 3 meters tall. All of them turned to look at the humans. Zixthor saw it in their eyes, the same thing he felt. These humans looked so weak, so vulnerable, so easy to break. "Please sit," said Council Leader Vornax. He was an old Velcrin, his shell marked with the scars of many battles. "We have reviewed your application for council membership. We have some questions." Jake nodded and sat down. Claire and Peter sat beside him. They did not seem nervous or afraid, even though they were surrounded by beings who could tear them apart without much effort. "Your species wants protection under our mutual defense treaty," Vornax continued. "But we must be honest with you. The galaxy is dangerous. We have enemies. The Kresh horde raids our outer colonies. Pirates attack trade routes. Sometimes there are battles. Your biological reports suggest that humans would not survive such encounters." "We understand your concern," Jake said. His tone was polite but firm. "We know we don't look like warriors. We don't have natural weapons or armor. But we've been fighting for survival since we climbed down from the trees on our home world. We know how to protect ourselves and our allies." A Grath representative made a sound like rocks grinding together. It meant doubt. "You carry primitive weapons, projectile throwers. We abandoned such technology thousands of years ago." "Kinetic weapons have certain advantages," Claire said. She leaned forward slightly. "They're reliable. They don't need power cells. They work in any environment. And they're very, very effective when used correctly." "Against what?" another representative asked. "Small animals? Your own kind? You have never faced a real threat?" Peter spoke for the first time. With respect, council members, you're making assumptions about us based on how we look. That's a mistake many predators made on our homeworld. Most of them are extinct now. There was silence in the room. Zixthor studied the humans more carefully. There was something in the way they held themselves. A calmness. A confidence that seemed out of place for such fragile beings. "We will take your application under consideration," Vornak said finally. "For now, you are granted provisional status. You may observe council operations for 6 months. After that, we will vote on full membership." "Thank you," Jake said. "We won't disappoint you." The meeting ended. Zixthor showed the humans to their quarters. They had been given rooms near the human ship, in a section of the station that was quiet and away from the main traffic. "If you need anything, contact me through the station network," Zixthor said. "We appreciate your hospitality," Jake replied. "I hope we can learn a lot from the council." Zixthor left them and returned to his own quarters. He spent the evening reviewing more files about humans. Their history was full of wars. They fought each other constantly for resources, land, ideas, and sometimes for no clear reason at all. They had nearly destroyed themselves several times with weapons that could burn entire cities in seconds. But they had also shown capacity for cooperation. They had built great civilizations. They had created art and music. They had reached for the stars, despite having no natural ability to survive in space. They were a puzzle, weak but persistent. Fragile but dangerous to themselves. Peaceful but experienced in war. 3 weeks passed. The humans kept to themselves mostly. They observed council meetings. They asked questions. They were polite to everyone. Jake, Claire, and Peter became familiar faces around the station. Other humans from their ship visited sometimes, always friendly and curious. Zixthor began to think that humans might actually make decent council members. They learned quickly. They respected other cultures. They seemed genuinely interested in peace. Then the alarms started. Zixthor was in his quarters when the sound began. It was a loud, piercing wail that meant only one thing. The station was under attack. He rushed to the command center. The large screens on the walls showed the space around the station. 5 ships had appeared, dark and angular, covered in weapons. Zixthor felt his organs go cold. Kresh warships. "All security forces to defensive positions," Vornax was ordering. His voice was steady, but Zixthor could hear the fear underneath. Everyone feared the Kresh. The Kresh were a nightmare species. They stood 3 meters tall. They had 4 arms ending in claws that could cut through steel. Their exoskeletons could stop most weapons. They felt no fear and showed no mercy. They existed only to fight and conquer, and they were boarding the station. On the screens, Zixthor watched the Kresh ships attached to the station hull. Cutting beams began slicing through the outer walls. In minutes, maybe less, Kresh warriors would pour into the station. "Evacuate civilians to the core shelters," Vornax ordered. "All personnel not trained for combat, fall back to secure zones. Security teams, prepare to repel boarders." Zixthor knew what that meant. The security forces would try to slow the Kresh down. They would fail. Everyone would die. The Kresh did not take prisoners. Then a voice came through the communications system. It was calm and clear. "Station Command, this is Commander Morrison. We're still docked. Request permission to deploy our security team to assist in defense." Vornax looked at Zixthor in surprise. "Commander Morrison, we cannot ask you to fight. Your people are not equipped for this." "You're not asking. We're volunteering. I have 43 trained personnel ready to deploy." There was a long pause. What did it matter? They were all going to die anyway. Maybe the humans could buy a few extra minutes. "Permission granted, Commander. Coordinate with Security Chief Krath." "And thank you." "We'll do our best," Jake said. "Morrison out." Zixthor pulled up the security cameras. He watched as humans emerged from their ship. 43 figures in black armor, carrying their primitive kinetic weapons. They looked so small compared to the Velkrin and Grath security forces. They were going to be slaughtered. The first breach alarm sounded from Sector 7. The Kresh were inside. Zixthor watched the security camera feeds with growing horror. 20 Kresh warriors had burst through the breach in Sector 7. They were in the cargo bay, a large open space filled with containers and equipment. The Kresh roared as they charged forward, their four arms swinging, their claws gleaming under the lights. The Velkrin security team was already there, 10 warriors with plasma rifles. They opened fire immediately. The blue energy bolts hit the Kresh armor and burned black marks across the surface. 3 Kresh stumbled, 1 fell, but the others kept coming. That was the problem with the Kresh. They felt no pain. A wound that would stop any other species just made them angrier. The Velkrin team fell back, firing constantly, but the Kresh were closing the distance fast. Then 10 humans rounded the corner. They moved in a way Zixthor had never seen before. Not running wildly, not freezing in panic. They spread out in a line, each one taking position behind cargo containers. They moved together like parts of one organism. The human in front was a woman. Sergeant Amy Parker, according to the identification tag on the screen. She raised her hand, made a quick gesture, and dropped it. The humans fired. The sound was incredible. Not the clean hum of plasma weapons, but a hammering thunder that echoed through the metal walls. Boom, 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 over and over, so fast it sounded like one continuous roar. The lead Kresh warrior simply came apart. Chunks of its exoskeleton flew off. Dark blood sprayed. It fell backward into the Kresh behind it. Another Kresh took 3 hits to the chest. The impacts actually lifted it off the ground and threw it back several meters. It crashed into a cargo container and did not get up. A third Kresh lost its upper left arm. The limb separated from the body and fell to the floor. The Kresh looked down at the stump, looked up at the humans, and charged anyway. Zixthor could not believe what he was seeing. The Kresh exoskeletons were supposed to be almost unbreakable. Council weapons could damage them. But it took concentrated fire. These human projectile weapons were tearing through Kresh armor like it was paper, but the Kresh were not so easily stopped. 8 of them survived the first volley and kept charging. They crossed half the distance to the human line in seconds. Their claws were up, ready to tear and rip. Sergeant Parker dropped her rifle. She pulled a long knife from her belt, maybe 30 centimeters of metal blade, and instead of running away, she ran forward. A Kresh reached for her with 2 of its arms. Parker ducked under the first claw, blocked the second with her armored forearm, and spun inside the creature's reach. Her knife flashed up and found the weak point where the Kresh's neck joined its body. She drove the blade deep, twisted, and pulled it free. The Kresh made a gurgling sound and collapsed. Another human, Corporal Danny Wright according to his tag, was not as lucky. A Kresh grabbed him with 2 arms and lifted him off the ground. It was going to tear him in half. Danny did not scream. He did not beg. He reached to his belt, pulled out a small cylinder, and pressed it against the Kresh's chest. "Fire in the hole," Danny said calmly. The explosion was small and sharp. The Kresh's chest armor cracked. Dark fluid leaked out. The creature dropped Danny and staggered back. Another human shot it 3 times in the head and it fell. Danny rolled to his feet, picked up his weapon, and kept firing. 90 seconds after the humans had arrived, all 20 Kresh warriors were dead or dying. 2 humans were wounded, neither seriously. Zixthor stared at the screen. His translator device made a soft clicking sound as his mandibles moved, but no words came out. "Impossible," he finally whispered. But there was no time to think about it. Alarms were sounding from 2 more locations. Sector 12 and Sector 18. The Kresh were attacking in multiple places. On the screen, Zixthor watched the humans split into teams and move to intercept. They ran through the corridors with purpose, their weapons ready, their movements coordinated. In Sector 12, the Kresh had trapped a group of civilian researchers in a storage area. 15 Kresh warriors stood between them and escape. The civilians were mostly Velkrin, including several younglings who huddled together in fear. 6 humans arrived. They were led by a man named Lieutenant Greg Hayes. Greg looked at the situation for maybe 3 seconds. Then he started giving orders in a calm, quiet voice. Covering fire on the ones near the civilians. Paul and Lisa, flank right. I'll take Kevin and go left. Sophie and Ben, get high ground on those crates. The humans moved immediately. Sophie and Ben climbed up on top of some tall cargo crates and set up their weapons. Zixthor noticed these weapons were different, with longer barrels and complex sights on top. Sniper rifles, designed for precision shooting at long range. Sophie fired. A Kresh warrior at the back of the group dropped with a hole through its head. Ben fired. Another Kresh fell. This one shot through the weak point, where its arm joined its body. The other Kresh spun around, trying to find where the shots came from. That was when Paul and Lisa threw small objects into the group. They looked like the cylinder Danny had used. The explosions were not big enough to kill the Kresh, but they were loud and bright and scattered the warriors. The organized group became confused individuals. Greg and Kevin appeared from the left side, firing as they moved. They targeted specific Kresh, taking them down one by one. Through it all, Greg kept talking in that same calm voice. Paul, watch your right side, one coming at you. Lisa, good job. Sophie, big one in back, he's giving orders to the others. Kevin, stay with me. It was like listening to someone give directions for a training exercise, not a real battle. The humans talked to each other constantly, sharing information, coordinating their fire, adjusting their positions. When the last Kresh fell, all 15 were dead. The humans had not lost a single person, though Paul had a deep cut across his shoulder where Kresh claws had grazed him. He was already wrapping a bandage around it while still holding his weapon ready. The civilian researchers ran past the human team toward safety. One of them, an old Velkrin scholar, stopped and touched Greg's arm. Thank you, the scholar said. You saved our younglings. Just doing our job, Greg replied. Now get to the shelters. This isn't over yet. The humans moved on to the next fight. Zixthor left the command center. He had to see this with his own eyes, had to witness it directly, not through cameras. He needed to understand what these humans really were. He found Commander Jake Morrison in Sector 18. Jake was standing in front of a portable computer screen, studying a map of the station. Dr. Peter Hughes and Lieutenant Claire Bennett were with him. Around them, the sounds of battle echoed through the corridors. Weapons fire, explosions, the roars of dying Kresh. But Jake looked calm, like he was reviewing a puzzle, not coordinating a desperate defense. Commander, Zixthor approached carefully. I must understand. What are you? Jake looked up from the screen. His eyes were tired but steady. We're soldiers, Ambassador, same as any warrior species. No, Zixthor said. He pointed at the screen showing the battle statistics. No, your people fight like nothing I have ever seen. You have no natural weapons, no armor plating, no biological advantages. You should be the weakest species in this galaxy. Yet you are winning. Claire turned to face him. She smiled. And this time, Zixthor finally understood what he saw in that smile. It was the expression of a predator looking at prey. Ambassador, can I ask you something? Claire said. When your people evolved, what were you? Predators or prey? Zixthor paused. The Velkrin evolved as herbivores. We ate plants. We developed intelligence to cooperate and defend against natural threats. And the Kresh? They evolved as ambush predators. They killed and ate other species on their world. Claire nodded. Most species in the Galactic Council are like you. They evolved as prey animals or passive hunters. Even the ones that became predators, like the Kresh, were specialized. They evolved for one type of hunting. Do you know what humans evolved as? You were prey, Zixthor said. You must have been. You have no claws, no venom, no— We were apex predators, Claire interrupted. The top of the food chain on our world. Not because we were the fastest or strongest, but because we were the smartest and most persistent. We hunted animals bigger and more dangerous than us. We hunted them by being smarter, by working together, by never giving up. We tracked prey for days across deserts and mountains. We coordinated in groups to take down creatures that could kill any one of us with a single blow. We made weapons because our bodies were not weapon enough. She pointed at the tactical display. The Kresh are strong. They are fierce and they do not feel fear. But they fight like animals, with instinct and aggression. We fight like humans, with planning, with coordination, with intelligence, and with the absolute refusal to quit. An alarm blared. Another breach. This one in the residential sector where most of the station civilians lived. That's too close to the civilian shelters, Jake said. He pointed at the map. Claire, take your team. Peter, get medical support ready for casualties. Claire's team moved out immediately. Zixthor found himself following them. He had to see more, had to witness what these humans could really do. The residential sector was chaos when they arrived. The Kresh had broken through in large numbers here, at least 40 warriors, maybe more. They were moving through the corridors, searching for civilians to kill. The station security forces had set up a defensive line, but they were being pushed back slowly. The Kresh were winning. Claire's team, 12 humans in total, arrived and immediately started setting up what she called a kill zone. They placed their small explosive devices in specific locations along the corridor walls. They positioned themselves behind cover with overlapping fields of fire. They established fallback positions deeper in the corridor. All security forces, this is Lieutenant Bennett, Claire spoke into her communicator. Pull back to checkpoint Gamma on my mark. We will cover your withdrawal. The alien security forces looked confused for a moment. Pull back? Retreat from their defensive line? But they had learned in the past hour to trust the humans. They began moving back in an organized manner. The Kresh saw the aliens retreating and roared in triumph. They charged forward down the corridor, sensing victory close at hand. They ran right into the human kill zone. The humans opened fire. The sound in the enclosed corridor was deafening. The kinetic weapons thundered. The explosive devices detonated with sharp cracks. The air filled with smoke and blood and the screams of dying Kresh. But there were so many of them, and they kept coming. Zixthor watched something that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. 12 humans held a defensive position against 40 Kresh warriors for 17 minutes. They killed or wounded most of the Kresh force while conducting what Claire called a fighting withdrawal. They used every advantage they could find. When the Kresh charged, the humans fell back to their prepared positions. When the Kresh tried to flank, the humans had already placed explosives to stop them. When ammunition ran low, they picked up weapons from fallen Kresh and used those. The humans adapted constantly. When the Kresh figured out how to avoid their ranged fire, the humans switched to close combat with their knives. When the Kresh started using the bodies of their dead as shields, the humans changed positions and attacked from different angles, and through it all they talked to each other, sharing information, coordinating, planning 3 moves ahead. Falling back to position Echo. Paul, watch the left corridor. Annie, place charges at the intersection. Joe, conserve ammo, we're running low. Contact, 3 more coming from the maintenance shaft. Nathan and Susan, redirect fire. Everyone else, keep your current targets. They're adapting to our pattern. Switch to pattern Delta. Randomize fire positions. Make them guess where we are. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Like watching a deadly dance where every step was planned and every movement had purpose. But the Kresh kept coming. There were just too many. One human, a young man named Corporal Chris Lee, got separated from the group. 5 Kresh warriors surrounded him. He was trapped in a small side corridor with no way out. Chris looked back at his team through the camera on his helmet. He smiled. Actually smiled. "Tell my mom I love her," Chris said. Then he armed every explosive device he carried, all 6 of them, and waited for the Kresh to close in. The explosion shook the entire sector. When the smoke cleared, Chris and 7 Kresh warriors were gone, just pieces left behind. Zixthor felt something twist inside him. The human had sacrificed himself without hesitation, had smiled while doing it. Claire's voice came over the communication channel. It was steady and calm, showing no emotion. "Chris is down. Continue the mission. Fall back to Checkpoint Delta." The humans kept fighting. By the time reinforcements arrived, the humans had killed 36 Kresh warriors and wounded 4 more. They had saved over 200 civilian lives. The cost was 3 humans dead and 9 wounded. Zixthor could not comprehend the mathematics of it. 3 humans killed versus 36 Kresh dead. In any previous battle, those numbers would have been reversed. The Kresh should have slaughtered the humans easily. But nothing about humans was easy. The battle continued for another 3 hours. The Kresh had brought nearly 300 warriors to the station. They had expected an easy victory. They had expected the station defenders to break and run like prey animals. Instead, they found humans. Zixthor moved through the station as the battle progressed, watching the humans work. He saw Sergeant Amy Parker lead a team through narrow maintenance tunnels to flank a Kresh position. He saw Lieutenant Greg Hayes coordinate a 3-team assault that trapped 40 Kresh warriors in a cargo bay with no escape. He saw Dr. Peter Hughes treat wounded humans and aliens alike, working calmly even as weapons fire echoed around him. And he saw something else, something that disturbed him more than the violence. The humans were enjoying this, not in a cruel way. They took no pleasure in causing pain. But there was an energy to them, a focus and intensity that had not been there before, like they had been waiting for this. Like this was what they were meant to do. He found Jake Morrison again in the command center. The human commander was studying tactical displays and coordinating his teams across the entire station. "The Kresh are consolidating their remaining forces," Jake said to the station commander. "They know they're losing. They're going to try something desperate." "What do you think they will do?" the station commander asked. "If I were them, I'd go for the power core," Jake replied. "If they can destroy it, the resulting explosion will take out the entire station. Mutual destruction. Can you stop them?" Jake looked at the display for a long moment. "Yes, but it's going to cost us." He outlined his plan. It was complex and dangerous. The humans would split into 3 teams and attack the Kresh from multiple directions simultaneously. One team would create a diversion, another would infiltrate through the maintenance shafts, the third would come through emergency access tunnels and hit the Kresh from behind. "The maintenance shafts are barely wide enough for most species to fit through," the station commander protested. "And the emergency tunnels have not been maintained in years. They could collapse." "Then we'll move carefully," Jake said simply. "And if even one Kresh reaches the power regulators, then we make sure none of them do." Zixthor watched as the human teams prepared for their final assault. They checked their weapons. They redistributed ammunition. They helped each other with equipment adjustments. And they talked quietly among themselves, not about the danger, not about the possibility of death. They talked about normal things. About food they wanted to eat when this was over. About messages they wanted to send home. About plans for their next leave, like they were preparing for a routine assignment, not a desperate last stand. One of the younger humans, a woman named Private Kelly Foster, noticed Zixthor watching. "First time seeing humans in combat, Ambassador?" she asked. Her tone was friendly, curious. "Yes," Zixthor admitted. "I do not understand how you can be so calm." Kelly shrugged. "Fear is natural, but we train to work through it. Besides, we have good people on our team. We trust each other. That makes all the difference." But you might die. Yeah, might, Kelly agreed. But probably won't, and worrying about it won't help. Better to focus on the job. She finished checking her weapon and stood up. Got to go, Ambassador. Try not to worry too much. We're pretty good at this. Then she walked away to join her team, looking like she was heading to a training exercise, rather than a battle that could kill her. Zixthor returned to the command center. The tactical displays showed the 3 human teams moving into position. Claire's team at the main corridor, Amy's team crawling through the maintenance shafts, Jake's team navigating the dangerous emergency tunnels. The Kresh had gathered around the power core. Nearly 80 warriors, all that remained of their assault force. They had placed explosives on the core regulators. If those devices went off, the station would be destroyed in seconds. All teams in position, Claire's voice came through the communications system. Team 2 ready, Amy reported. Team 3 ready, Jake confirmed. There was a brief pause. Then Claire spoke again. All teams prepare for engagement. Execute on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. And the final battle began. Claire's team opened fire first. They had positioned themselves at the main corridor entrance to the power core chamber. Their weapons thundered in the enclosed space. The muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like lightning. The Kresh immediately turned toward the sound. They roared and charged, abandoning their positions around the power core, exactly as the humans had planned. The Kresh ran straight into the kill zone Claire had prepared. Explosive devices detonated. Support beams that the humans had weakened collapsed, creating barriers and obstacles. The Kresh charge faltered, broke into smaller groups, became confused. That was when Amy's team struck from the side. Zixthor watched on the security cameras as the second team emerged from the maintenance shaft access points. They had crawled through spaces barely wide enough for their bodies, moving in complete silence. Now they set up their weapons with quick efficiency and opened fire into the Kresh flank. The Kresh found themselves taking fire from 2 directions. They tried to split their forces, to respond to both threats, but they were not trained for this kind of tactical thinking. They were warriors, not soldiers. They knew how to fight, but not how to adapt. Then Jake's team came through the emergency access tunnels behind the Kresh position. It was a perfect coordinated strike. 3 groups of humans attacking from 3 different directions at exactly the same moment. The Kresh, for all their strength and ferocity, had no answer for it. The battle turned into a slaughter. The Kresh tried to fight back. They were powerful warriors. Each one was worth 5 normal soldiers in single combat. But they were not in single combat. They were surrounded, outmaneuvered, and being systematically destroyed by an enemy that refused to fight fair. Zixthor had spent his entire life studying warfare. He had read the battle reports from dozens of species across hundreds of conflicts. He had never seen anything like this. The humans moved like water, flowing around obstacles, filling gaps in their lines, supporting each other without needing orders. When one human's weapon jammed, the human next to him stepped forward to cover. When a position became untenable, the humans fell back in perfect coordination, each one covering the others, and their accuracy was terrifying. The Kresh were fast and wore heavy armor, but the humans shot them in the weak points, the joints, the neck, the eyes, places that other species did not even know were vulnerable. One massive Kresh captain, larger than the others and covered in battle scars, realized what was happening. His forces were being destroyed. He roared orders, and the remaining Kresh, maybe 20 warriors, formed a tight group and charged toward the power core. If they could reach the explosives they had planted, they could still destroy the station, still achieve mutual destruction. Jake Morrison moved to intercept. Zixthor watched as the human commander stepped directly into the path of the charging Kresh captain. The alien warrior was twice Jake's height. It had 4 arms to his 2. Its armor had survived the entire battle without serious damage. Its claws could rip through steel plating. Jake dropped his rifle. At close range against this enemy, kinetic weapons would not be fast enough. He drew his combat knife, a 30-centimeter blade of carbon steel, and faced the Kresh captain. The Kresh captain laughed. A human with a small knife against a warrior who had killed hundreds. It was absurd. The Kresh charged, 4 clawed arms reaching to tear Jake apart. Jake moved. Zixthor had thought the humans moved fast before, but this was different. This was something else entirely. Jake's body flowed like liquid. He was not where the claws struck. He was somewhere else, always somewhere else. The first claw swipe missed by centimeters. Jake ducked under it and cut the inside of the Kresh's leading arm, severing tendons. The second claw came from the right. Jake blocked it with his armored forearm and drove his knife into the joint, then twisted and pulled it free. The third and fourth claws came together. Jake threw himself into a roll between them, came up behind the Kresh captain, and slashed across the back of its legs. The Kresh captain stumbled. It spun around, faster than something that size should move. All 4 arms swept in a wide arc meant to catch Jake no matter where he dodged. Jake did not dodge. He went forward, inside the reach of those claws, and drove his knife up under the rim of the Kresh's chest armor. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, 5. The Kresh captain made a gurgling sound. Dark blood poured from its mouth. It took 1 step forward, reached for Jake with weakening arms, and collapsed. Jake stood over the body, breathing hard. He pulled his knife free and looked around. The other humans had finished dealing with the remaining Kresh warriors. The power core chamber was silent except for the hum of the machinery. "Station command," Jake said into his communicator. His voice was steady despite his heavy breathing. "Power core is secure. All Kresh hostiles eliminated." Zixthor looked at the casualty reports coming through the system. The station had lost 47 personnel, mostly security forces, some maintenance workers who had been caught in the initial breaches. The Kresh horde had committed 300 warriors to the assault. All 300 were dead. The humans had lost 9 killed and 23 wounded. 9 out of 43. The numbers made no sense, should not be possible, but they were real. Zixthor left the command center and went to the power core chamber. He needed to see it with his own eyes, needed to stand in that place where the impossible had happened. The chamber was a mess. Bodies everywhere. Kresh warriors torn apart by kinetic weapons and explosives, scorch marks on the walls from energy weapons, dark blood pooled on the floor. And standing among it all, the humans. They were checking their wounded, collecting their equipment, securing the area. Professional, efficient, calm. Jake saw Zixthor and walked over. The human commander's armor was covered in Kresh blood. His face was tired, but his eyes were alert. "Ambassador," Jake said. "The station is secure. The Kresh are gone." "I saw what you did," Zixthor said. "Against the captain. That should not have been possible." "Nothing is impossible," Jake replied. "Just difficult. I had good training and better motivation." "Motivation?" Jake gestured around the chamber. "If I had failed, everyone on this station would have died. That's pretty good motivation." Zixthor looked at the human commander, really looked at him. Jake was tired. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline wearing off. He had cuts and bruises visible through gaps in his armor. He was mortal and fragile and capable of dying just like any other creature, but he had stood against a Kresh captain in single combat and won. "Your species," Zixthor said slowly. "I thought I understood you. I was wrong." "Most people are wrong about humans at first," Jake said. "We don't look dangerous. That's by design, actually. On our world, the most dangerous predators were the ones that didn't look threatening until it was too late." "Are you saying humans are predators?" "We're saying that we survived on a world that was trying very hard to kill us," Jake replied. "And we did it by being smarter, tougher, and more stubborn than anything else. Those traits don't go away just because we reach space. A medic called for Jake's attention. One of the wounded humans needed the commander to make a decision about medical treatment. Jake excused himself and walked away. Zixthor stood alone in the power core chamber, surrounded by the bodies of Kresh warriors, and tried to process what he had witnessed. The humans looked weak. Soft bodies, no natural weapons. Fragile bones. But they fought like demons. They planned like masters. They coordinated like they were telepathic. And they refused to quit no matter how bad the situation became. What kind of species was this? Zixthor thought about Claire's words. Apex predators. The top of the food chain, not because of strength, but because of intelligence and persistence. He thought about Chris Lee, who had smiled before sacrificing himself to save his team. He thought about Kelly Foster, who had been so calm before walking into battle. He thought about Jake Morrison, standing alone against a Kresh captain twice his size, and he realized something that chilled him to his core. The humans had not been fighting at their full capacity. They had been holding back. This was them being restrained, being civilized, being part of the Galactic Council. What would they be like if they were not holding back? What would they be like if they were angry? 3 days after the battle, Zixthor visited the medical bay where the wounded humans were recovering. He needed to understand more about these creatures who had saved the station. The medical bay was busy. Dr. Peter Hughes moved between beds, checking on patients, updating medical records. He looked tired but satisfied. Most of the wounded were healing well. "Ambassador," Peter greeted him. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to see how your people were doing," Zixthor replied, "and perhaps to understand them better." Peter gestured for Zixthor to follow him. "They're doing well. Better than our initial projections, actually. Humans have robust immune systems. We heal fast when we're not killed outright." They stopped at a bed where Private Kelly Foster lay. The young woman who had been so calm before the battle. Zixthor noticed with shock that her right leg was missing below the knee. But Kelly was smiling. She was talking with another wounded human, laughing at something he had said. "Does it not disturb her?" Zixthor asked quietly. "The loss of a limb?" "Of course it does," Peter replied. "But she'll adapt. We'll fit her with a prosthetic leg. She'll go through rehabilitation. In 6 months, she'll probably be back on duty if she wants." "She'll fight again? After losing a leg?" "If she chooses to. Many humans do." Peter made a note on his medical pad. "We're good at adapting, Ambassador. It's what we do." Zixthor watched Kelly for a moment longer. She had lost a leg in combat. Her body would never be the same. Yet she was laughing, planning for the future. Not broken by what had happened. "You use that word often," Zixthor observed. "Adapt. It's the most important thing about humans," Peter said. He moved to the next patient. "We're not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most durable, but we survived on a death world by learning and adapting faster than anything else. Those instincts don't disappear just because we're in space now." Zixthor left the medical bay and went looking for Commander Jake Morrison. He found the human in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. "Commander," Zixthor approached. "May I speak with you?" "Of course, Ambassador." Jake gestured to the seat beside him. "How can I help?" "I have been reviewing the battle recordings," Zixthor said, "trying to understand what happened. Trying to understand your species." "And what have you concluded?" "That I know nothing." Zixthor settled into the seat. "Every conclusion I reach leads to more questions. Why do you fight so well? Your species lacks every physical advantage. You should be extinct." Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe that's exactly why we fight so well. Every other species in the galaxy evolved with some natural advantage. Claws, armor, venom, size, strength. They had something to rely on besides their intelligence. Humans didn't. We were weak prey animals on a planet where everything wanted to eat us. He turned to face Zixthor. Do you know what happens to a weak species on a death world, Ambassador? They either go extinct or they get very, very good at survival. Humans chose survival. We became tool users. We learned to cooperate in ways other species didn't. We developed persistence hunting, where we would track an animal for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We learned to plan, to think ahead, to imagine threats that hadn't happened yet so we could prepare for them. That sounds exhausting, Zixthor said. It is. But it kept us alive. Jake looked back at the stars. And then we learned something else. We learned that the most dangerous thing in any environment was other humans, so we got very good at fighting each other. We spent millions of years perfecting the art of warfare. Every generation learned from the previous one. Every war taught us new lessons. But you are peaceful now. You came here seeking membership in the council. We came seeking cooperation, Jake corrected gently. That's different from being peaceful. Humans learned a long time ago that cooperation is usually better than conflict. We can accomplish more together than apart. But that doesn't mean we forgot how to fight. It just means we choose not to unless necessary. Zixthor thought about this. And the Kresh attack was necessary. The Kresh were going to kill everyone on the station. Yes, stopping them was necessary. Do you feel regret? For the Kresh you killed? Jake considered the question carefully. I regret that the situation required killing. I regret that we lost 9 good people. I regret that Kelly Foster lost her leg and that Chris Lee died protecting his team. But I don't regret stopping the Kresh. They made their choice when they attacked civilians. You are very different from what I expected. Most people are surprised by humans, Jake said. We look harmless. That's actually useful. Better to be underestimated than overestimated. 1 week later, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. All the representatives had seen the battle recordings. All of them had reviewed the casualty reports. All of them had spoken with their personnel who had witnessed the humans in combat. Zixthor sat in his seat and watched as Council Leader Vornax called the session to order. We are here to vote on humanity's application for full council membership, Vornax announced. In light of recent events, this vote has taken on new significance. The human delegation showed extraordinary courage and skill in defending this station. They saved countless lives, including many of ours. He paused and looked around the chamber. However, we must also consider what we have learned about humans. They are formidable warriors, perhaps the most effective fighters we have ever encountered. This raises questions about whether we want such a species in our council. Some might see them as a threat. A Grath representative stood. I fought beside the humans. I saw what they can do. Yes, they are dangerous. But their danger is directed outward, toward enemies, toward those who threaten the innocent. I believe humans would be valuable allies. A Thornid representative spoke next. The humans could have fled when the Kresh attacked. Their ship was docked and ready. They could have escaped while we died. Instead, they stayed and fought. They lost 9 of their people defending strangers. That speaks to their character. One by one, the representatives spoke. Some expressed concerns about human capabilities. Others praised their effectiveness. A few admitted they were frightened of what humans might become. Finally, it was Zixthor's turn to speak. He stood slowly, gathering his thoughts. When the humans first arrived, Zixthor said, I looked at them and saw weakness. I thought they needed our protection. I was wrong. The humans do not need protection. They are perfectly capable of protecting themselves. He paused. But they also protected us. When they could have saved only themselves, they chose to save everyone. When they could have let us die, they chose to fight. 9 humans died defending this station. That is 9 more than they needed to sacrifice if they had simply abandoned us. Zixthor looked at the human delegation. Jake, Claire, and Peter sat quietly, waiting for the verdict. I have learned something about humans in the past week, Zixthor continued. They are predators, yes. They are dangerous, yes. But they are also capable of great compassion. They protect the weak. They value cooperation. They choose peace when possible but are fully prepared for war when necessary. These are qualities we should embrace, not fear. He sat down. The chamber was silent for a moment. Then Council Leader Vornax spoke. We will now vote, all in favor of granting humans full council membership. Every representative raised their hand. The vote was unanimous. Then it is decided, Vornax announced. Humanity is granted full membership in the Galactic Council with all rights and privileges thereof. Furthermore, we invite the human delegation to establish a joint military training program to share their tactical knowledge with other species. Jake stood and bowed slightly. The human government accepts. We're honored to be part of the council. We look forward to working with all of you. After the session ended, Zixthor approached Jake one final time. Commander, I owe your species an apology. When you arrived, I saw weakness. I was wrong. You saw what we wanted you to see, Jake replied with a slight smile. That's another human skill. We're very good at being underestimated. And now that we know what you are capable of, now you know that humans make better friends than enemies. Jake extended his hand. Zixthor grasped it, feeling the strength in that grip. We're glad to be here, Ambassador. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Better to face it together. What will you do now? You mentioned a training program. We'll teach what we know. Tactics, strategy, coordination, how to maximize the advantages you have and minimize your disadvantages, how to adapt in combat, how to think like humans think. Jake paused. Though I should warn you, our methods can be difficult. We train hard because we fight hard. I saw how hard you fight, Zixthor said. I hope I never see it again. But I am grateful you were here when we needed you. As Jake walked away to join his delegation, Zixthor reflected on everything he had learned. Humans were not what they appeared to be. They looked fragile, but were incredibly resilient. They seemed peaceful, but were devastatingly effective warriors. They valued cooperation, but were fully prepared for conflict. Most importantly, they had a quality that Zixthor had rarely seen in other species: a refusal to give up, a determination to survive no matter the odds, a stubbornness that would not accept defeat. And now these humans were part of the Galactic Council. They would share their knowledge. They would help defend the weak. They would fight alongside other species against common threats. Zixthor thought about something Jake had said. We make better friends than enemies. Standing there in the council chamber, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species, Zixthor felt something he had not expected. He felt safe. Because now, if enemies came for the Galactic Council, they would face not just the various member species with their individual strengths. They would face humans. And as Zixthor had learned in the most dramatic way possible, facing humans in combat was something no sane enemy would want to do. The galaxy had changed, humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be quite the same again.